record. We are recording. Connect audio. Yes, need that. Do it. There you go. All right. Well, should I put this back big? There. I'll look here. No. That's looking good. All right, so the Zoom link is up. Anybody joining me yet besides? Oh, Bo's there. Hey, Bo. Yeah, we're getting our media up and running. All right, get the Facebook Live going. All right. You. Say something and go on. Trying two different things here. That is as far zoomed out as it goes.
Really close.
All right, I know.
I should switch that around.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Hit go lunch.
This is super weird. Having two cameras. I don't know which of me to look at. But all right, for anybody that's starting to tune in, we're just getting some of our technical stuff situated.
Are you in the event?
Yeah, I'm in the event. I should be. Am I not? Arnold's watching.
Okay.
Hi, Megan.
Oh, hi, Megan. We
Somebody
are
else is
working
watching.
on.
We're getting our tech set up. Yes. We've never done Facebook and Zoom at the same time. So we're just figuring a couple of things out, and we're waiting for everybody to hop on that's going to be here. So we'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. But we're excited. We're super, super excited. I wish my cameras were a little closer together. Hey.
Two cameras, so I get like a zoom on the computer and then like.
Yeah, we got one above their camera.
Video. Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Pretty cool.
All right.
But I think they're live as well.
Mm-hmm. Hey there, we are. We're live. I don't know. I'm gonna have to stick my water somewhere, but
Yes, we're doing the Zoom and the Facebook Live. We're doing them at the same time. We've never done this before, so
thank you
just
for your grace.
thanks for some, just some whatever. We'll get this figured out.
It's cool because it records.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I keep hearing sound. I don't know why I keep hearing sound. I'm going to turn the sound down. That's in call volume. Whatever, is that the right thing?
I think we can mute the participants.
There, you're right. We need to. Sorry, everybody. Meeting settings.
Thanks for joining us. We're gonna get started here in just a minute.
Mute participants. There we go.
Right.
There. I think that's.
Perfect.
I think that's got it.
Okay.
All right.
Kind of up and running now. So we do have the live, and I have a computer set up where we can check in on any chats or questions. So as we're talking, if you find that you have some questions or you just want to put a shout out to us, let us know what you think is good or you need more detail on. We'll grab questions and try to keep up on the chats as well as we move through this. So cool.
Oh, yes. So, all right. we'll hopefully have some more people joining us as we're going along, but I think we're going to just jump in. So, yes. So first of all, thank you very much, everybody who is joining us, either Zoom or Facebook Live. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we're really excited to have this time with you tonight.
Yep. So we are going to be talking to you guys about how we talk to our kids about sex and homosexuality. And, you know, for those of you that don't know us, I know that there are a lot of people who invited people. And so we are Nathaniel and Amy White.
Hello.
We've been married for 13 years. We have, I know. We have 5 really amazing kids. We have 4 boys and 1 girl. So as you can imagine, it gets a little wild in our house sometimes. Our oldest is 12, and then they are 10, 9, 8, and 6. So it's a busy household. We homeschool. Nathaniel and I also pastor a church, Presence Church, in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. And before we were pastors, though, we were elders at another church, and we did a ton of premarital counseling. And it was funny, we discovered that
we got a reputation.
We got a reputation because I was surprised, actually, how little people knew about their own bodies and about sex. And so we kind of got the reputation for being the ones who talked about sex, and I call this the sexperts. And we started getting a lot of referrals, and people would call us even after they were married, and we're having all these conversations about sex.
We had emergency conversations with people on their honeymoon. That was really interesting. Fun. And we felt honored to be invited into those places in people's lives. And other elders would be like, I'm so glad that you talked to them about sex.
Well, parents would come up to us and be like, thank you for
thank
talking
you so
about
much.
This.
Yeah. So
anyway, you know, but we're not talking about sex. Well, we are talking about sex with married couples, but mostly what we're talking about is then how we talk about sex with our kids. You know, as Christian parents, you know, we really do want God's best and God's design for our kids. And, you know, in this day, they are like bombarded with sex at a very young age, whether that's TV or school curriculum, the kids on the bus, you know, there's just all these things that are really bombarding our kids. And so we want to make sure that we're on the forefront of this, having the conversations with our kids, because we really want our kids to be able to live in the world, you know, and be the influencers and not be influenced by it. So we're going to share some of those things. And just so you guys know, we have like, when we posted, you know, that we had that conversation with our kids about talking about homosexuality, we're like, yeah, we can share that conversation. Oh, wait, we have like 12 years of conversations, and we have a long course that is about 4.5 hours of content. And yes, and
that was when we were trying to prep something for an hour. It was 4.5 hours of content.
Yes, so we have about 4.5 hours of content that honestly goes really deep into some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And there were many things that we do talk about that we can't bring into this conversation tonight. But we do want to let you guys know that we are going to offer a class after this one. It'll be a 3-night class for a very small fee, but we will give you some notes about ages and stages. We'll cover a whole bunch of stuff in that one as well. But tonight we just asked ourselves, you know, out of everything that we have, what are really the key things that we can give to you guys so that the most powerful takeaways of all this content, so that you guys can really begin to have, you know, the conversations with your kids that will hopefully, you know, ground them to the truth and the Word of God, and help them to be influencers and not just the influenced. So
So this whole us being here tonight, all of it kind of started from and sprang from one particular conversation that we had with our kids about homosexuality, and sharing about the fact that we had a talk, like an official talk with our kids about homosexuality. And so many people were wanting to know how that went down and whatever. But like Amy said, that conversation was rooted in a 12-year history of conversations and culture in our family. And so a lot of this really is coming from the culture of our home, conversations we've had for years. And so it all started with my friend in college named John, whose parents, their culture in their home, they were very open about sex. And in fact, they had a particular pot of silk flowers that the parents said, when this is outside our door, don't come in. One day they got home from church and it was outside the front door. It was just a big joke. But anyway, there was one time my friend John had told his mom that he felt like whenever he said the word sex, it just felt dirty. And she said, really? He's like, yeah. And so she said, sex, 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 sex. And he's like, okay. And it cured him from feeling awkward. And all of this, just the interactions with him, and they lived close to campus, so I even got to interact with his mom and dad in a healthy way. And it was just so different from how either of us were raised, that it was like we wanted to do something more like my friend John. And
that sex would just be a normal,
that it would just be a normal word in our house,
conversation that we have,
not awkward, just something that we can actually have conversation with our kids about. So that was kind of the vision starting with. It didn't start that way right from the very beginning, and we'll get through, practically speaking, what did it look like at some different stages and ages and things like that. We'll get there. But what we want to get to first is the two most important tools that have really guided us and helped us stay the course, and really what's created the space for us to have powerful conversations with our kids about sex and sexuality, as well as a lot of other things. So Amy's going to take the first tool.
Yeah, so one of the first things that really drives us is this principle. It's called the law of first mention. And basically what that means is that when a new subject is introduced to somebody, then anytime that subject comes up again, you'll always go back and kind of weigh it with the first place and the first thing that you heard about it, because that's part of the way that our brain is wired. Like, we want to be the first ones to lay the grid for sex. And so we are in our home, we're always like working to be ahead of the curve with this for where our kids are in their ages and their development. And so because we know that as they go out into the world on the school bus, or at school, or hanging out with friends' house, you never know, scrolling Facebook, anything on computer or whatever, that they might come across sex. So we really wanted to make sure that we were the first ones to have the conversation of sex with our kids, because we knew that they then would weigh everything else against that. So we actually talked to our kids about sex the first time when they were very young. So we actually talked about the physiology and anatomy and biology of sex.
The very basics.
Yeah, like, hey, sex is when a man puts his penis inside a woman's vagina. That's sex. And, sometimes babies are made through that. And we just stated it very clearly like that. Didn't go into a whole lot of detail, but we did talk about, God's design, and this is the way babies are made, and some of that actually kind of came out of.
And it's for husbands and wives.
And it's for husbands and wives and married people. And that the reason that we were having that conversation was because Nathaniel had a vasectomy, and we can see you guys, but we're not getting audio.
Oh no!
Can the rest of you hear us? I assume, because I see many people on there. I don't know what to do about that.
I don't either.
Okay.
So let us know if anybody else is not hearing us. We got a message from some friends that are not hearing us right now.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Okay. So you guys can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
I can hear somebody on the Zoom.
Hey, yeah, this is Bo. I'm hearing you guys just fine, so I don't know what's
Okay.
going on.
Okay.
Everybody else.
Zoom
I just wanted to give you a thumbs up.
Okay. So like some of the other people who are watching live, if you could just let us know if you're hearing us or not.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I hear you. So other people are hearing us.
All right.
Okay, so Nathaniel had a vasectomy, and the kids were actually kind of concerned about why Daddy was laying around and not doing okay. And so then that kind of spurred the conversation. And then, the truth is that kids, this is like proven, that most of their worldview is actually established like by the time they're 6 years old. And so when we are talking about having sex conversations, it really is important to kind of catch them in the earlier parts of their lifespan,
if at all possible.
if at all possible. Because that is, you know, when all their worldviews and things are being shaped. Now, if you're on this call and you haven't had the conversation yet, don't worry. Like, you can have the conversation and then just keep going.
Yep.
But, you know, I really want to give us this encouragement, especially as new curriculum is being established in schools. You know, I think it's probably like how our parents felt when the theory of evolution came in. You know, like, here's these Christian kids with creation theology going in, and they're going to be taught evolution day in and day out, you know. And I went through the public school system and heard about evolution, but I still came out believing in creation because that was the foundation that was laid for me in the beginning. And it was, you know, reestablished, you know, week after week in Sunday school and, you know, in Bible reading and just times like that. So I do want to give us hope that even though curriculums are being established that are saying there's no more gender, or that homosexuality is totally right, then, you know, like, we do still have this hope and this truth that our kids will be grounded, they'll be okay, they can make it through these things, but we do need to be having the conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing with the law of first mention is that, you know, it's similar to evolution. When I talk to my kids about this, about evolution, you know, I tell them, well, when you go to school, you're going to hear them talk about this theory of evolution. This is why they think that way. This is, you know, the things they're going to say about it. And now this is why it's not wrong, why it's not right, because this is God's word and this is the truth. And then they have something really, like, it's not a surprise when they get to school and they're talking about the theory of evolution.
Yeah.
And then we look for ways throughout the days and weeks, you know, like, they're going to read it in the books they read. Oh, here it is. Look, it says billions of years old, you know, but that's not true, you know, or, hey, you know, we evolved from monkeys, but you know what? They know that's not true. So as it's coming up in TV shows and in books they read, we just kind of keep talking about the theory of evolution, but it's the same with sex. So when we're watching TV and we see these commercials and these things, we just begin to say, okay, well, you see that, well, we know that that's not right, and this is why. And so taking the natural opportunities anyway. So in a way, this is an inoculation, you know, against what's going on out there, is just laying that foundation of truth from an early age.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Nathaniel's going to talk about the second principle here that we use in
Yeah.
our home.
And just the one thing I just wanted to add or clarify, I'm not sure, I didn't quite catch it, whether Amy said it or not, but just that in the law of first mention, really one of the things we're trying to do is just, we're working to stay ahead of what our kids need. Like, we know that they're going to need certain information at certain ages, and we just try to make sure that they have that information before they actually need it. So, like, we're going to talk to them about puberty before they hit puberty, just as an example. Those kinds of things, so that they're actually prepared before the questions start coming up. So anyway, I don't know how clear that was said, but she did awesome. So that's the first tool, is the law of first mention, that this is totally on your side. God created family so that you have the greatest influence and the greatest potential for influence in your kids' lives. And you know, just even if you're not given the luxury of starting your kids' lives with that vision, and you're kind of thinking to yourself you need to catch up or you're behind or whatever, like, don't worry about it. Remember how this whole started was like, I was in college and hadn't been raised with an ongoing conversation about these things, but still had the curiosity and was desperate for somebody to actually sit down and talk with me and give me healthy information about sex. So you can be that person. The John's mom, yep. So anyway, so the second tool is just understanding that emotions or feelings don't always tell the truth. So the way this works is, like, this is a super common, almost everyday thing that we are teaching our kids and reminding them about, and it covers all sorts of things and situations. So this is like, you have your 5-year-old who is asking you every day for 11 months if it's their birthday yet, because they have no concept of time. It's like, okay, well, they may have just gotten their birthday presents a month ago, but their brother got some birthday presents 2 days ago. And all of a sudden, they believe that they never get anything good, that their brother is the one who always gets all the nice things, and really it's this jealousy over a temporary thing. But the way that it's being expressed is this emotion and belief that I never get anything good. I'm left out, I'm forgotten, I'm mistreated, et cetera, and just sadness. And so we come at this and we say, okay, this actually isn't true. Remember that you just had these things. Let's find the things to be thankful for. Well, I don't have anything to be thankful for. Okay, yes, you actually do have things to be thankful for. Let's list them. You have a good house, a good family, a bed, these comfortable blankets, your stuffed animals. Like we list it on and on and on and on and on, and we have them repeat it with us. And they experience how when they set their mind and their words on truth, then their emotions turn around. And all of a sudden, they're delivered out of the negative emotions and the negative mindsets that were lying to them. They're delivered into truth, and the truth leads them to happiness and joy and connection with family again. And now, instead of the jealousy poisoning their connection with their brothers, they're playing nicely. So like that's one example, but this is something that happens all the time. There is a constant battle over our mindsets, and that includes us as parents. But it is about our kids as well, that there's a constant battle over mindsets. And so we can shepherd our kids through this, and the guiding factor in all of it is, what is God's truth? What is God's truth? What is God's truth? What is God's truth? And because it's such a continual experience for them, that, okay, I experienced that my emotions lied to me, and when they lied to me, I behaved in a way that brought me pain. My emotions lied to me, I acted out of those negative emotions, and it brought me pain. I hit my brother, I disconnected from that relationship. Now they don't want to play with me because I was mean. Like, there's negative consequences from behavior that didn't come from truth. Does that make sense? So if there's negative consequences from behavior and actions, choices that don't come from truth, and there's positive experiences and positive, like, good feelings that come from choices and decisions, actions that come from truth, that do come from truth, like, it's constantly being reinforced that following God leads to me being happy. It leads to feeling good. It leads to blessing. It leads to things working better. And not following God, not believing Him, leads to pain. It leads to hardship. It leads to things not working the way I want them to. So then that experience that all of our kids have had on a regular basis, that becomes really easy to tie into conversations about healthy sexuality or unhealthy sexuality, and tying those things to these experiences they've already had. For one thing, it makes it relatable to them, makes it real to them. Like, they don't have sexual experiences, but we can talk about someone who is believing the emotions of homosexuality. They feel attracted to someone of the same sex. Those are emotions, but emotions can lie, and emotions can lead us into something that isn't God's best. So now all of a sudden they can relate to it. They have a box to put it in internally, and it can help them have compassion for people who are going through those things. oh, I've believed my emotions when they're lying to me, and it brought pain to my life. These people are believing their emotions when they're lying to them, and it's bringing pain in their life. And like there's an actual empathy and compassion then in those moments, and it's not like, oh, those people. It's like, oh no, I understand this. I've done this too. But it also puts them in a position where they know the way out. They know the way out is to follow God's truth. So all of those things then just lead us into the question of what are the truths that are God's truths that we can give them at different ages that are basically at a level they're going to understand.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit through like some of the basic truths that we have laid down in each stage of life. And I will eventually share the conversation that we had with our kid in detail there with that. And sorry, we're just reading some comments and questions there. When kids are young, ages 0 to 2, we're really just laying the foundation of, God made them. They're made in the image of God, that they're loved, they're treasured, they're important. We really are reinforcing like mommy, daddy, and them. This is family. Hey, we're a family. We're a mom, we're a dad, we're babies. The children, we're just continually talking about those things. So that really lays that foundation. And then, ages 3 to 5, we begin to actually like teach the anatomy. Kids are, potty training. This is just natural transition stuff. Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. We actually use the proper terminology.
And we say the words in private until they're not awkward to us.
Yeah. Marriage, we can talk about marriage because the kids actually kind of go through this stage again about 3 to 5 years old. They're like, I want to marry mommy. Mommy's already married to dad. Well, then I'm going to marry my brother. Well, you can't because he's a boy and you're a boy. Well, I want to marry my sister. Well, she's our sister, and so we begin to have these conversations, laying the groundwork again. Marriage is between somebody of the opposite sex that's not in our family, and then
who's not already
married, and these are conversations that happen all the time, but it's building that framework and that worldview for them from a young age. That in this season, we only tell them that married people have babies. We didn't ever tell them that you could have a baby outside of marriage. It was like, no, babies are for married people, because that's, again, creating this grid and framework.
We're trying to teach them God's design first. That is their foundation. That's where they're starting from, this is what God's design is. And later, when they are able to process more complexity and more mature concepts, then we can bring in exceptions.
Yes, and that babies are made from a part of mommy and a part of daddy, because again, they're really curious about where did the baby come from? How does it get out of your tummy? Well, we go to the doctor. The doctor helps get the baby out. And that usually satisfies the curiosity. But those are things that we can talk about at that stage when they're kind of concrete thinkers and not really having a grid for all of that. And then. Go ahead and jump in with the next one.
So like age 5 to 8, you really start seeing some dramatic shifts in mental capacity and ability to process complexity of thought and things like that. And really, even from just a broader parenting standpoint, this is a time frame where you're able to shift from kind of primarily laying a foundation of what's real into really defining what's truth and what's true. So in ages 5 to 8, you can get more detailed. Like, this is the age where we have told all of our kids, all 5 of them know the basics of sex now. Sex is penis inside of a vagina, and it is only for marriage. And they know, they might not be able to tell you this because we need to repeat some of the conversations, to be honest. We're a little behind in repeating some of the conversations from where we'd like to be, but they would be able to know at this age, like, babies are made from a sperm and an egg, and at some point in this, age range. You can discern for your own kids where in this age range they're ready for it, but you can also begin introducing the reality that some people don't live by God's truth, but God's truth is still what's best for us. And so you're not just handling conversations about homosexuality or transgenderism, gender identity, or pornography, honestly, is something you can talk about at some level here. You can talk about bad pictures, but it's honestly, especially if your kids are going to daycare or public school, it's a really important conversation to have during this age range, because statistically speaking, a huge percentage of kids are already exposed to pornography by the age of 8, and almost, I mean, it's by the age of 11, it's a majority. I think it's a big majority. I don't remember the exact percentages, but so again, staying ahead of the curve of what information are they going to need to know, and making sure that they have that information. So it can just be bad pictures and talking about private parts. Private parts are private, so we look away. We give people their privacy. If somebody else is not taking privacy for themselves, we still give it to them.
And we practice that as a whole family. When commercials come on, we're all like, oh, look away. And even mom and dad look away.
Watching football game, and it's the cheerleaders. Okay, we
our
look
kids
away.
know at commercials, like they have the remote in hand and they are ready to switch it right now, so we practice.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
So you can always bring it back to that filter, that foundation. This is God's truth. That we're not going by what we feel like doing. We're not going by what our emotions are telling us to do. We're going by what God is saying to do, and we understand that that's going to lead to the greatest benefit for our lives. It's going to lead to better happiness. It's going to lead to better joy. It's going to lead to better blessings. It's going to lead to better things just working right.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say this, and whatever, this is my pet statement, so I'm sorry I'm throwing it in, but it's not like God was in heaven one day and he just picked a list of things in a spreadsheet that could potentially be wrong and threw darts at them, and whatever the dart hit, that's what he made rules to say was wrong. Like, God is our designer. He understands how we're made, and so he's going to, it's literally, it's a user manual, and you can't put the toaster in the bathtub. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you know what I'm saying? Don't drop your glassware on the floor. It's gonna break. Like, there are things that break us, and God has given us instructions about those things. How are we designed to work, and how are we not designed to work? It's just practical that way. So, yep. So those are some of the conversations. You can have a conversation. What is actual sex? How are babies made? Being a bit more scientifically specific. And you can start to introduce some of the things of, people who aren't living by God's truth. Just one little thing on those conversations, that's especially easy if, some people around you are not making the best of choices and it's affecting your kids. And so you can use those conversations to guide them through the things that they're experiencing. So a lot of those conversations for us have come because our kids have cousins who are suffering the consequences of choices their parents are making that aren't according to God's design. And so we've had conversations about divorce and multiple parents, and lots of those kinds of conversations, because it's a real life circumstance our kids are actually experiencing. So
that was kind of the 5 to 8 age range. Looking at like 8 to 11 years old, we really go after a lot of the, this is the season right before they're going into puberty. And we really want to talk to them about these things like before they get there. It's so much easier to talk about sex ed with a child who's not being turned on by the conversation. So this is like making sure that you are ahead of the curve on things. But we do talk in detail about God's design for their body and, puberty in particular. And we really come at this with a, hey, you are entering a super special season and we're going to celebrate this. We're not going to dread the teenage years and puberty and all of this. And then we take a deep and detailed dive into the conversations about how their brains change, that they're going to experience hormones and emotional roller coasters. And then when they're in that emotional roller coaster, we'll be like, hey, do you notice that you're doing this? And they're like, oh yeah. And we're like, don't worry, this is just this season, you know. There's body changes that we talk about, you know, periods, menstruation, body hair, you know, and even my 12-year-old is like so excited. He's like, Mom, look at my leg hair is like changing. I'm like, dude, that's so cool. Or, you know, I'm like, how many times has your voice broken in this company? He's like, I know, you know.
No.
So it actually ends up being like this really fun and not awkward thing because we've laid the groundwork and had the conversations and prepared them for the things that were coming and
Right.
celebrated it, you know.
Yeah. And specifically, I want to encourage especially any dads that sorry, like dads, you got to step up. It's mostly women in this conversation. And I don't know if y'all realize, but like kids don't come without a dad. Anyway, that's like, I am way passionate about fatherhood. So like, yes, yeah.
Brandon.
I know.
Bo.
That's right. We got like 3 guys and me. All right, 4 of us. We're gonna change the world. But here's what I would really, yes.
I
it's
know
important.
all the dads are out putting kids to bed.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, one thing that was really important to me was that that I actually like was thinking ahead and am thinking ahead to like okay, when I have one daughter and I get one chance at her getting her first period. And what am I going to do to make sure that my daughter knows that her becoming a woman is celebrated, that this is not some gross thing, it's not some disgusting thing, this is like powerful. And so I don't know, I spent a lot of time just dreaming up what am I going to do to really try to make this a special thing. And I don't know, you don't have to do the exact same kind of thing, but like, I don't know, like those kinds of things, just whatever you can do that's going to celebrate it, that's going to flip the script on this thing. You're going through the changes, they're going through the changes in their body, and obviously, like all of us remember it being, to some extent, being awkward. It's sometimes painful, a little embarrassing, and as parents, we can actually do something to help smooth that over and celebrate these changes instead. Yeah, don't leave them in the dark when it comes to the changes that are going to happen in puberty, but instead, as much as you're able to, celebrate the changes and tie it to God's healthy, normal, good design. We've said that to our kids so many times, like the changes happening in your body, they're good. They're good changes. This is normal, it's healthy, it's good. So.
Yeah. Ages 8 to 11, we also talk about God's design for relationships. And again, we've already been talking about mom, dad, family, you know, people who don't understand that they're made in the image of God, like men liking men, things like that. But we really, then you can dive deeper into covenant relationships between a man and a woman. What is covenant and why that's important? And ask them, you know, one thing that we just kind of do even in this stage to begin to make it not awkward, but not to, like, we don't want our kids dating for a long time, but we also know that hormones are starting to kick in and things are changing. And so we want to intentionally, again, get in front of the curve and have the conversation. Like, hey, who do you think might be a good spouse for you someday? Hey, is there anybody on your radar? Do you have a crush? You know,
Right.
Part of that, not to try to push them to that, but for them to begin to think, what is it that would make a good spouse? You know, is this person even a candidate or not a candidate? You know, we also ask them specifically like, hey, do you feel like you're ready to get married? No? Okay, you know, then we don't need that relationship until you are ready to get married. Again, I know this is pretty early, but it's laying a foundation that they're going to be making their decisions on later. When the hormones are raging, then they have something that they can fall back on, like, oh, I've already had this conversation. I already know the questions to ask.
Trying to plant the seeds of making those choices based on wisdom and not out of raging hormones and the want to have sex and the whatever, all of those things.
Making decisions based on their values instead of their emotions and their feelings.
Exactly.
So,
And really that's just basically a more mature level of the same conversation we had when they were 3 to 5 that said, hey, you have to marry somebody who's not family, who is the opposite gender, who's not already married. Like, it's just a more mature version of that. Instead of talking about relationships, you got to talk about character.
Yeah. Also really good because at this age, they're beginning to be able to like empathize or understand other people's point of view a little bit, you know, and so just talking to them specifically about, you know, anytime we really use a lot of just natural circumstances. So when you're with somebody who's, you know, in a broken relationship, or, you know, we have in my family a lot of really hard situations in my extended family, you know, and this is when they do understand the consequences of sex outside of marriage. Could be a baby and you're raising them by yourself. Like, let's walk through that person's life and how does that work for them? And,
Right.
you know, not necessarily, you know, we're not judging them. We're just helping them to see like, hey, you can take that route, but this is where that usually leads. But look at this route, like look at our family, look at the goodness of our family. And we talk about that a lot, like how good our family is. And they're like, we have a really good family. In fact, they've had conversations with their friends. They're like, I'm so glad my parents disciplined me. It's good, you know, they need it and they want it and they see the fruit of it. So really good time to talk about that too.
Yeah. By the way, just to make sure we say it, that those aren't like arrogant, look at us conversations,
No.
like, oh, we're so awesome. Like,
y'all have awesome families too.
Yeah. Well, and we also say to our kids all the time, like, we live vulnerably and like we're in process and we're in a journey. We don't have parenting all figured out, but we do still have something good. You know, we admit when we make mistakes, we ask for forgiveness, we apologize, we do all those things, you know, so there's that side of it, but there's also we don't need to live in insecurity, like, oh, you know, we can know we got something that's good. So, and you can too.
Yeah. And then just, again, more topics at this age, you definitely should be talking about divorce and abortion, and just continuing the homosexuality and gender identity kinds of things. And we really try to cover this with our kids, not just from the standpoint of like compassion and understand where people are coming from, because like we said, we want our kids to be influencers, not the influenced. And like Jesus hung out with the broken people. And so if we can just help to demystify that or help them to understand some of those things before they have an encounter, you know, in some of those areas, then I think that it puts them more on the like, hey, I'm actually equipped to help you through this, instead of like, wow, that's really great, I should go after this, you know, like, so those are just some of the conversations that we have at that point. Realizing that we didn't have or anything so there, or do you want to?
Yeah, and we can kind of wing it just a little bit. So in our long talk, we did another age group of the 11 to 14. But honestly, and beyond, really, but honestly, at this point, I mean, it's like they know the basics of what sex is. They're having conversations about relationship. If you've done this from the beginning, you have a pattern of ongoing, like this is a habit of having ongoing connection and relationship and communication around these topics. And so it's going to be, you naturally continue to communicate just simply at deeper levels. You know, and the talking about family can always be tricky because none of us are living in an ideal situation of family. And so, like, if we're painting an ideal, and I just want to give you permission to not be at the ideal way. We're going to give ourselves permission. We're not painting ourselves as the ideal. This is the vision we're going after, ourselves as well. And there's times we're hitting it, and there's times we're not. But the ideal is that you're able to do this as a husband and a wife who are experiencing healthy sexuality yourselves, and that's going to be like a whole talk. I had so many good notes that we did not get to include in this, And in fact, it was like we almost had a little bit of a fight last night about that section. I'm like, no, we need this. But whatever. So it's awesome. You'll want to be part of the longer class, but hopefully you're part of a marriage where you are able to pursue healthy sexuality together. And so it's not just a journey that you're guiding your kids on. It's actually a journey that you are also going on. And so you are growing, you are progressing, you are maturing. And so it constantly is giving you another place to lead your kids towards. You only have to be one step ahead of them, which they are already in the world. So I'm assuming that for most of the people watching this, unless you're already an empty nester or your kids are already having kids, like for most of the people watching this, you're already one step ahead. I helped with a project for Lisa Bevere in Haplet, Covington called Moms of Men, and it was awesome. But Lisa said they had 4 boys that are all grown and they're in their 20s now. But she said they would talk about sex around the dinner table, and they'd be like, my friend said this about sex. And they're like, that's not true. They're like, well, my friend said it. And they're like, really? Who do you think knows more about sex? Like the people who've been having sex for like 20 years, or your friend who hasn't even been alive then? So like, anyway, bottom line is, hopefully that's the ideal situation that you are able to be part of, where you're able to be monitoring yourself, and simply these conversations just are able to keep growing and going deeper, asking more questions, being just continuing to connect about this, and not getting to a place where, oh, they've got it figured out, I'll just let them coast from here. One specific talk that I don't know that we specifically mentioned, but at some point they are going to need like an actual purity talk, which like our favorite resource on that is Chris Valentin's book, Moral Revolution, because that was the first place I heard like, oh, here's the vision, like that the price I pay to keep my purity or regain it after it's been lost, like after I've given it away or after somebody took it in abuse or trauma or whatever, like the price I pay to get it back or to keep it is the value of the gift I give to my spouse on my wedding night when I make my covenant and put sex in its rightful place. So you can have those conversations. The very bottom line, I'm going to give you the 2 goals that are the end goal of this, and then Amy's going to wrap us up just really quick, I think. And maybe we can still have some time for questions and answers. If you have questions, start writing them in the chats now, so that we can start seeing them and they're ready for us when we get there. But the end goal, the end game is there's 2 goals. 2 goals. First is that our kids, your kids, become the influencers instead of the influenced. So like, what do they do if their best friend someday tells them they're gay? Or what do they do if a friend is hounding them with sexual advances? That actually, my story, that I came into high school as a naive homeschooled kid, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was bringing home like 5 notes a day from girls, and I had no idea what opportunities were being offered to me. But eventually, there was one girl in particular that offered very clearly what was available to me, and it was not easy. And I'd wish I'd had some of these conversations to help me through that time. Goal 2, that they someday have an awesome, healthy, mutually fulfilling sex life in marriage that gives you amazing grandkids to swish. But really that is the goal. We're raising them unto something. There's a vision we're trying to get them to. And it's not just trying to hopefully make them just barely squeak by without like giving away something important. Like, no, actually the goal is to get them to thriving marriage that includes healthy sexual life in marriage.
Yeah, I feel like there's like 1,000 more things that we could talk about, but a lot of them are some deeper things too. But you know, one of the things that got cut on the editing floor just for time, but like talking to your kids about the yes of sex instead of the no of sex, and
Right.
again, you guys, you know, we're going to do another class. It's going to be 3 nights long. We're going to have a whole bunch more stuff, including like, what do you do with pornography and masturbation, and how do we point them towards the yes instead of the no, and some more of those things. So anyway, I'll put a link out here where you could join us for that later. But I do want to actually share the conversation that we did have with our kids, because it really was good. And I had just been feeling like, you know, we have talked about biblical, what the Bible says about homosexuality. You know, we talk about what the Bible says, that, you know, we're created in the image of God, and he created us male and female, you know. And so when kids do decide that, you know, they're a boy and they feel like they want to be a girl, you know, like, doesn't that seem a little ridiculous? Or, you know, kids want to eat Tide Pods too, but that doesn't mean we do it, you know. But we've talked a lot about homosexuality, and was realizing, you know, like, we're talking about sometimes the wrongness of it. And I started just feeling like, you know, I don't ever want my kids to encounter someone who's a homosexual and just be like, it's us and it's them, like that sin, and we don't want to take part in their life. And so I just sat them down, and I told them that one of my uncles was gay. And growing up, I loved him. He was amazing. He was so fun. I'm like, he's got the convertible car, and he's always the party guy. And I wanted to hang out with him because it was so great, you know? And so I truly loved my uncle. And he ended up dying of AIDS and complications with AIDS, pneumonia specifically. And I said to them that, you guys are going to go out in the world, and you're probably going to find a friend who tells you that they're gay. And I don't want it to be shocking to you. I want you to be able to see that, that people who are gay are a lot like you and me. They're going to seem like they have life all together. Some of them are going to be really nice. They might be the nicest people that you've ever met, and doing a lot of good things. So don't think of them as like a monster, but instead come at it with this mindset that they're living in less than the best that God has for them. Yeah. And when we begin to paint the picture of the best for our kids and why they can understand that homosexuality is less than God's design for that. And we're going to go into that in a lot more detail in our other class too, some of that equipping, like how can our kids understand that homosexuality, what is the best, and why isn't homosexuality the best for that? Right. But truly, sin is just missing God's glory. It's falling short of his glory. It's missing the mark. And so I talked to them about, heterosexual sex outside of marriage, and how is that any different really than homosexual sex, and but how sex is really the sin against our own body and in its internal sin versus some of the other sins. But when we come to people who are gay or who are gender confused, look for the place of compassion, that they are living in a lie, or a place where they're not understanding the truth of God's goodness, and that my kids go in then to save, and to, Jesus didn't come just for the healthy, he came for the sick too. And so Jesus sat with these people, and he loved them, and he led them to truth. And so my kids can see themselves then as bringers of truth and bringers of light and bringers of love, instead of just being afraid of them or judging them or warring against them. There's another way to bring that shift and that transition, and that's really to show them God's goodness and his goodness in the heterosexual relationships and in marriage. So that was the conversation that we had with our kids, but it was based on previous years and the fact that my kids already knew what homosexuality was and what sex was and all of those things. So we felt like we needed to give you guys some background before we jumped in on that. So we're going to come over to a couple of questions. Could you next, please?
Yes.
And somebody did ask, do we do the flower pot by the door?
No, at least not yet.
But yeah. You know, we've kind of talked about it at points. There was one day though, we had the door locked and my daughter like picked the lock. Fortunately, she didn't catch us, but I did sit her down and just say, hey, you know what? When that door is locked, mom and dad are having sex. So unless you want to see that, I would suggest staying out. And that was it. She never picked the lock. So she knows.
Yes.
All right, let's see.
Yeah.
You're welcome for sharing.
Something else I was going to say.
So it says, what's great about this is that it's really generational. Our kids typically, hopefully, will follow our example and therefore their kids. Thank you for boldness and transparency from a grandma. Yes. What do conversations look like as for you as kids get older and they're being influenced by their friends with values that differ from the vision of the kingdom? But my friend said this. How do you begin to approach this? I feel like all I have as a template is, well, we're different, son. And I don't think that would have been.
Yep. Another comment came in.
Yeah.
We lost our place.
I don't think that would have been enough for me when I began asking the questions. Nathaniel, that's a great question. And my first answer
It was Nathaniel asking. She's not talking to me. I didn't ask that question.
First of all, I think it starts previous to when this question comes in. We did send our kids to school for a while. Right now they homeschool, but they would bring home conflicts and things. And truthfully, it is a level of sitting down and listening and vulnerability. And yeah, we're different, but we keep tying it back to the truth of God's word and the goal that we're aiming for. So we're making this choice, not just because we're different, but because there's something better. And because, again, this is going to come a little bit to identity that we've been speaking over them for a number of years about who they are, you know, that they are protectors, that they are the light bringers, that they are the influencers, that they are the leaders. You know, my kids make declarations over themselves all the time, and we are seeing them begin to walk into these things. And but really the conversations, I think, start in the smaller things. And when you begin to feed them truth and some of the smaller things and go deep in some of those other things, when that question comes, it's a little bit easier.
I'd say the same thing. If you're able at all, again, this is painting an ideal where you're able to start this, if not from the beginning, from early on. But like Amy said, just as an example of that, our daughter had the friends that she was friends with at school. And the group she initially was friends with were the ones who were most fun, who were most personality-wise like her. Like the shallow level parts of your personality, the way that they had fun and the way that they competed and the way that they played and all of those kinds of things. But for most of that entire year, she would come home hurt because she kept being excluded off and on during recess. That today the girls wouldn't play with her. Today it was fine. The next day they wouldn't play with her again. And it was just kind of like, you know, you're worth better than that, you know, and we're able to affirm value and like you're worth better than that, and even kind of nudge her towards things that really we're not able to choose for. Like, hey, I know that name 2 or 3 girls that are probably needing a friend who is a strong leader like you to come and just bring them together. And they would have the character, they would have fun, they would be loyal, they would be the friends you actually want to have. And it took a number of months, but by the end of the year, she'd switched friendships. She'd switched to the better friends. And again, there's so much of what Jesus said that you can know a tree by its fruit. Like, you really, really can look at the life of the wicked, and you can see people who aren't living by God's design. It doesn't bring the same blessing. It doesn't bring happiness. It doesn't bring joy. It doesn't bring healthy relationships. Like, it just doesn't work right. The user manual says don't do it for a reason. So I mean, the more that you're able to make those connections so that they can see for themselves, following God works.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be following God is right, because I don't know, there are rule followers who are just motivated by doing what's right. But for the rest of us, like, you know, we can be motivated because this is actually what works.
You can see the fruit of
You can
wisdom.
see the fruit of wisdom.
Stacy asks, have your kids ever innocently talked with other people about sex, and how did
Other
that
people's
go?
kids.
Other people's kids. Yes.
That happened one time.
And
We
one
learned from
time
it.
we did. And we have really, you know, when you talk to your kids, especially your young ones, about it, tell them not to talk to other kids about it, but that is the job of their parents. Now, if the other kid's already talking about it, then I think it's okay for our kids to steer them straight or whatever, you know, but not to go out talking about this, because they need to hear it from their parents. And my kids have never had Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, and so they understand, like, you keep Santa Claus a secret, you don't ruin this for other people. And so once we kind of laid that out for them, they all, you know, were like, okay, yeah, we get it, we don't talk to people about sex. So the other kids about sex. But yes, we did. And I got a text from a mad mom. And it was kind of sad, because it's the very thing that I didn't want to happen to my kid, and then my kid was the one that went and did it. So I mean, I felt really bad too. Fortunately, it was a good friend of ours, and hopefully she's not mad at me anymore. But it did force her into a conversation about sex with her daughter, which is really good. So Jennifer, you're asking, like, how do we explain to our one-day toddler that their relatives who look like a man or a woman,
The relative who looks like a male is a woman.
is a woman. Yep. Or that their uncle married a woman who now looks like a man. Yeah, I'm going to jump in on this one because I've already got some answers. Okay. So first of all, when you're raising your toddler, again, this is so good to talk about. You know, you have a vagina, you're a girl. Kids they actually will sit at the table and begin to have conversations. Mommy, are you a boy or a girl? You know, Daddy, are you a boy or a girl? Like they actually are trying to, like, classify and figure this out. If they don't have it, just
more than one of my boys has come to either Amy or me when they were younger and been like excited. Daddy is a boy just like me.
Yeah, and you know,
I'm a boy just like Daddy. Yeah.
When they are toddlers, we are saying, you know, well, you have a penis, so you're a boy. You know, you have a vagina, so you're a girl.
Yep.
You're a girl like Mommy. He's a boy like Daddy. You know, and we're always saying those things. And then, so when they do get to be a toddler stage, first of all, in the younger years, like I said, when I said that, you know, when they're younger, we only say only married people have babies. Babies come in marriage, you know, like we actually didn't tell them the full truth yet. But you can tell them, like, isn't it silly that someone who's a boy would dress like a girl? Like, that's, I guess, how I would approach it, because honestly, that's part of what we've done with our kids, is talk about the ridiculousness of it. Isn't it strange that kids these days, even though they have a penis and their DNA says that they have this, that they want to be a girl? Like, why would they want that? So
yeah.
So that's kind of how we talk about it with our kids, is, you know, but then not shaming that as well. Like, so what do you think happened in their life that hurt them so much, and really that they could be that confused? You know, isn't it sad that they didn't have a daddy to tell them that they're actually a man, or that they're a mommy to teach them how to be a woman? You know, and really paint those things about, like, oh, you know, like, you're a girl, like, and you're going to be a good mommy when you get older, and girls grow up to be mommies, and some of those things. So really, those are the ways that in those toddler years where you can handle it. If you can just, like, gloss over it for a while until she gets a little older and can understand a little bit more, then you can have kind of more of that in-depth conversation, you know, like, oh, actually, you can have a baby without being married. But, you know, we start with the foundations that are the actual truth of how it should be, God's design, you know, and then bring in, when they get the mental capacity, that unfortunately people deviate from that, but isn't that sad? And don't you have compassion for the fact that they don't understand what the goodness is and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. And one thing that I would say, just kicking a camera stand. One thing that I would say, just in understanding brain development and things like that at that age is kids in toddler years are so concrete. I mean, even to the point where like they're watching an animated something on TV and they don't realize that actually is not real, that it's drawn pictures and cartoon and animated, and they don't have a grid for that. If they see it, it's real. If they don't see it, it's not real. I mean, that's even just a small extension from when they're babies, and it's like babies actually need to, if they're not seeing it now, it doesn't exist, which is why sometimes they cry when you leave a room and you're like, I'm right here, I just left. Like, okay, well, in their world, you stopped existing. So, you know, going from babies, that's where their brain development is at, to toddlers where their brain development is, you know, whatever they see kind of is what is real. Then we as parents have that ability to just shape some of those things. And it can be as simple as like, oh, Uncle so-and-so is confused, or, you know what I mean? And try to tie it into times where they've been confused, or, you know, I don't know, connecting it to some of their personal experiences, I guess would be my.
Okay, I'm gonna read
hope that helps.
the next question here. It says, where do I tell my kids to put their desires during their hormonal years? Like the general rule is masturbation is wrong. This is part of growing up. These hormones were given to us by God. So where do I tell my son to put his desires? How do I edify him in his feelings, but also tell him he has to suppress them for years?
Yes, can I take that one?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is part of the fuller answer that we're going to give in the full course. We haven't been, I don't know, people are in and out for the conversation, but we're doing a full course, 3-day immersion thing on all of this. And part of that will be painting what actually is God's design for sexuality. So here are some of the steps that we're taking, okay? Some of these include just mindsets about bodies in general. So we go through checkout lanes in a grocery store, and there's the magazines with girls in swimsuits or scantily clad, whatever. And you can have a talk with your sons and your daughters about the objectification of women and treating women like they're an object or a thing instead of a person. That's something they can get. It will push a justice button on the inside of them, and you can cultivate that inside of them from a very young age. Well, that translates into guarding people's private parts, and private parts are for special purposes. And it doesn't, and one of the ways that I teach this is we inherited some china and crystal from my grandma, and it's special. It stays in a china cabinet. Like, Ed and I, our daughter, she'll use the tea set for tea parties, but otherwise, like, literally we've used it once in several years of having it, because it's special. You only use it for special occasions. That is what holiness actually looks like. It's being set apart for a special purpose. And so it's little conversations along the way about women's bodies are special, and it's and they're valuable as people, not just as bodies. And you are a prince who protects not just your own eyes, but you also protect the women, whether or not they know to protect themselves. and cover themselves or whatever. Like, I just realized I stepped into a deep hole of modesty and whatever. I'm not going to go there tonight. But take it in the context. I'm talking about raising men. Not boys will be boys, but men will be men. and shifting the paradigm of men and manhood. One of the things, I can give you this kind of preview into this, that I think that one of the hugest lies that our culture and even Christian culture has taught about sex is that sex is for men. Sex is not just for men, it is equally for women, or God would not have designed it as the number one primary thing that causes husband and wife to become one. That God made us to be one flesh. So the whole point of this is like, boys, I know that you're driven for this, but this is for a purpose. I get it from a physiological standpoint. They have a drive. There needs to be some sort of release. And so I guess as a bottom line, I'm trying to give some vision and some process, but as a bottom line, if a boy is masturbating every now and then, and it doesn't seem to be controlling, it doesn't seem to be connected to a pornography use, it doesn't seem to be connected to lust directly, then I'd probably, we're not there yet, but I'd probably just leave that alone. And, if it's not controlling, not connected to lust, not connected to pornography, I'd probably leave it alone, because I understand there is some physiological, like, there's a buildup and it needs a release. But I don't know. Well, we have 4 boys. We'll get to test it out. I'm really hoping that we are able to guide them into their first orgasm being with their wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really is important, I think. I read from Dr. James Dobson with Focus on the Family. He said, it's really important to kind of make sure that they aren't stuck in the shame of it,
Yes.
And so he's like, his dad told him, you know what? I don't think it comes between you and your relationship with God, whatever you decide, so that immediately broke the shame. That's part of the conversations that we are already setting up with our kids. And like I said, we'll go into this a little deeper when we have the more time to actually go through the whole part and process of pornography and masturbation. That it's not necessarily the masturbation that's the bigger problem. It's really the lust and pornography that is something that would have a deeper root, that would be a place of brokenness that really they need to have freedom in that.
Right.
So,
but again, just like we've been handling all of these other conversations, it's not a shameful thing. It's, hey, there's a truth. And if you live in the truth, then there's freedom, there's wholeness, there's blessing, there's, so.
Yeah. And again, this is being ahead of the curve too. You know what? You are going to go through physical changes in your body. These hormones are going to happen. Let's talk about, like the same way that we've talked about having their period or having wet dreams or whatever, where we can debunk it before it comes there, like, hey, you might feel like this. And if that happens, don't sweat it. This isn't the lifestyle that we want for you. We're going to keep painting the picture of the ideal. But you know what? If you fall short, it's not the end of the world.
We're still cheering you on. We're going to help you get there.
And if you feel like you're stuck in shame and condemnation, come talk to us. And we have a really open relationship with our kids. They've come to us with other things like that kind of nature. And so just bringing it up from the beginning. I want to talk to you just real quick about, because I know that there's a really common thing right now, and especially worldly parents. I can't believe how many people I hear talk about this. I don't know, maybe it's in Christian circles too, but they're talking about toddlers and young kids, 4, 5, 6, 8, whatever, like, hey, if you want to, go masturbate, you do that in your bedroom or in private, it's fine. Like doctors are telling people, don't tell your kids not to do it. And I don't really agree with that. I think that God gives us the toddler years to help shape actually what happens in the adolescent years. And so, we have 4 boys, dude. They were always like playing with their stuff. And we would just,
and they can get erections at any age.
At any age. And we're like, you know what, guys, got, especially when they're toddlers, girls feeling too, we just said, you know what, that's for peeing, there, it's a concrete thing, that's for going potty, just don't play with it, you know what, or, let's go wash your hands, see how mommy washes her hands, or you don't see mommy walking around with her hands down her pants, or daddy, like we just, and
if it'd be weird for him at 22, 42, or 62, then like maybe guide him out of it at 2.
Yeah. It is natural curiosity for kids to do this. It's totally natural.
Yep.
And I think that
Not
telling them,
sick, not wrong,
go
not
ahead and go
weird.
do this, actually builds something in them that isn't right, and it's not God's design, but you can
Right.
actually super easy, no shame. They don't even think anything of it. They're just like, oh, mom said don't play with that. Okay,
Right.
like, and you might have to remind them a few times, like,
Or a
'cause
few
it-
hundred.
or a few hundred times, but they do get over it, and they do,
Right.
and then it's just like it's never been anything, because they
Yeah.
learned, like, hey, I don't just sit around and play with myself
Right.
all day.
Or you ask them, why, hey, I see you're touching your penis, like, why are you touching it? And they might even be like,
Yeah.
well, it's sticking up. Like, okay, well, actually, if you keep pushing on it, it's going to stay up for a while. You need to stop touching it, and it'll go down.
Yeah, or they've actually come and been like, Mom, it's up. Like, what do I do? I'm like, no, like, we just make it no big deal. We have a little conversation. Oh, but what I wanted to say too with that, kids especially
Got 1
doing
minute.
that, I've actually heard, of kids actually rubbing themselves raw. Because they've never been taught, like, not to do that. So that's really a simple stage in life when you can just tell them, like, hey, stop playing with yourself. And then they learn that, that's not something that they have to do all the time. Anyway, so.
Yes.
Chris, I'm like, sign me up for the course. Okay.
Yay.
So any other last minute questions or parting thoughts? Otherwise, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have that longer course. And we're gonna.
So details on that longer course.
Yes.
You can sign up at
familyunedited.com. We do have a website out there, and there is a registration. It's an $18 fee. We're going to do 3 nights similar to this in
Those were
January.
January 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive deeper into some of these things and cover content that we didn't even get to in this one. We'll also give you a printout of an even more detailed, like, actual talks to have at different stages in their life. And we'll give you some book list resources too of
To help
things
you know
that,
what
that
you
we've
can
read
talk
with
about.
our kids and things like that. So
Help you start the conversation with your kids at certain ages. And
yeah.
so you're not stuck on this, just trying to come up with it on your own.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope it was helpful. We're always open for questions or whatever, and we'll leave this up for like 6 months. And if you come back on here, watch it again, take some more questions, we'll try to get back on and answer as best we can as well. So anyway, thank you for the shout out. If you loved this and you want some of your friends to see it, you can just invite them to this event too, and just have them watch the video, since it'll be in there.
Yeah, really, we want family to be like, your family can be so awesome that your normal is somebody else's life changing. And so, like, we've experienced that in our family. People have testified to that. We want it for you guys as well. And I know a lot of you guys are already living awesome lives in family, and we just want to come alongside you and make it as much more awesome as we possibly can and cheer you guys on. So, but we're going to sign off and let you guys go to bed.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. I can't see what it's asking me. Save or share. Yeah. Well, it's not delete.
think that.
Yeah, I think so.
This thing like.
Oh, but it's still recording.